Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This video will teach you how to play the basics of the violin in 25 bite-sized lessons. These videos are for anyone who is completely new to the violin and music in general and want to learn how to play the violin in their own time without being overwhelmed with too much information. If you want to view these lessons in their original elongated form, you can access them by clicking the link under this video. This content is part of my 1 to 30 violin course, which guarantees to take you from a complete beginner to an accomplished violinist in just 30 lessons. All links can be found in the description bar underneath these videos. Now, not all of these lessons will be interactive. Some will just be explaining a particular technique or music theory, and an icon will appear on the screen to show you whether it will be interactive or a theoretical learning session. At the beginning of each video, information will pop up on the screen to tell you what equipment and PDF printouts you will require for that lesson. Everybody ready? Let's begin. Okay, so with lesson 6, we're going to talk about the parts of the violin. So this all seems very trivial, but it's actually important to know, as you really do need to understand how and why the violin produces the sound and its music and the role that each different part plays. So once you've got your printout of lesson 6, I'm just going to quickly go through that with you so that you can understand. So if we're starting off with the pegs and the peg box is just the housing for the pegs, and the pegs are just going to adjust the tension of each string so that it can be tuned, as we did a few lessons ago. The next thing is the fingerboard, which is the black part that you've got there, and that's just simply where you're going to be placing your fingers on the strings just to create the notes. The neck here, which goes from the end of the scroll that we've got here, or end of the peg box, to the body of the violin. This is where you place your hand, and this would be where that you would be using to jump up different positions on the violin, as you will find out later on in the course. Now, the bridge always wants to be straight, it always wants to be vertical. So if you do find your bridge ever so slightly tilting, then you can just give it a good straighten. Just be careful with that. But the better the quality of the bridge, the better the sound is going to be. So if you've got a really thick bridge, you'll find that your sound will be quite nasally and it won't project very much. So it might be worth having a much nicer bridge installed on your violin if that's something that you might be looking to do. Now, the next thing you've got is the F holes in the violin. You've got one of these either side, and basically this is where the sound is going to be coming out the violin. The tuners that you've got in the tailpiece that we've got here at the end of the violin, I've only got one of those just because I've got a professional violin, but yours will more than likely or almost certainly have 4. The fine tuners are what we used earlier on in one of the lessons to finely tune the violin after the pegs had got it to almost the note we wanted to. The pegs don't give us quite the accuracy that we need, so we use the fine tuners just to take it into perfect pitch or the perfect note that we needed to get to. Then we've got the tailpiece at the end here, usually made of ebony if you've got a nice good quality violin, and that just simply holds the strings. And then you've got the end pin, or what some people call the button, and that is just where the tailpiece is held onto. Next, you've got your chin rest. It's nice to have a good quality chin rest. If you feel like you've got something a little bit too thick there, you can aim to look for something a little bit smaller, but you really do need a chin rest because that will just help you kind of secure your chin onto the body of the violin and stop it kind of moving around and slipping away. Then we've got the body of the violin. This just amplifies all the vibrations. The sound is coming out of the F hole, but the body of the violin has been designed and made in such a way to give the correct reverberations that then project out of the F holes. Then we've got the nut at the top here. Very difficult to show on camera and on the actual picture as well, but you will see on your actual violin itself that the end of the fingerboard kind of has like a little ridge there. That is just the end of the fingerboard. So it just helps to lift the strings ever so slightly off the fingerboard. Otherwise, if they were flat onto the fingerboard, we wouldn't physically be able to push the strings onto the violin. So the nut just helps to lift them up along the bridge so that we get the right height initially. Otherwise, they'll be too flat here and we won't be able to press the correct notes, but also indicates how far our finger needs to go. And then finally the scroll, which I did explain earlier, it's just purely decorative. It doesn't really do anything. It just looks nice. Back in the olden days when violin makers used to make the violins, it was just a way for the violin artisans or the violin makers to just show off their craftsmanship with wood, for what I understand, but it is just the end of the violin and just helps to house the peg box. And those are the different parts of the violin.